Asoter Sutta Srimad, His Divine Grace. Abhaya Charanadavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Shoter Sutta Srimad, His Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Govinda Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Yamuna Maya Ki. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki. Harinam Sankirtan Ki. Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Nita Gaura Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Ajnanatamurandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhuetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Visubhanu Suti Devi Anamami Ai Priye Vancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mare Kabando Mad Sangin Mad Guru Man Madana Mad Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Anandan Mostute Asadu Sadhu Tadayan Agini Chotatakara Hanamuncha Karachimam Premnarit Katayospura Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritanam Chavanarottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadhyaya Nastapreshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhaktinaya Nishtaki. So Hare Krishna, we read Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 2, Activities of Maharaj Agnidra. We'll be doing texts 9 and 10. So I think we'll do I'll do 9 and then we'll do 10 together. Shishya ime Bhagavata Parita. Wrong meter. Shishya ime Bhagavata Parita Patanti Gayanti Samasarsam Ajashram Isham Yushmashtika Vilurita Sumana Barishti Sarve Bhajanya Rishigana Ivai Vedasakaha. Translation. Seeing the bumblebees following Purvachiti, Maharaj Agnidra said, My dear Lord, the bumblebees surrounding your body are like disciples surrounding your worshipable self. They are incessantly chanting the mantras of the Samaveda and the Upanishads, thus offering prayers to you. Just as great sages resort to the branches of Vedic literatures, the bumblebees are enjoying the showers of flowers falling from your hair. Text 10. Vacham param charana panjarati trinam.
Vacham param charana panjarati trinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalalte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
One more time. Vacham param charana panjarati titirnam.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte. Vacha param charana panjarati tirinam.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Labda
Yasyam alata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchiranka vitanka bimbe.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Vacham param charana panjarati tirinam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Brahmana rupa mukaram Srinavamatubhyam.
Labda kadamba ruchiranika vitanka bimbe.
Labda kadamba ruchir anka vitanka bimbe.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte.
Yasyamalata paridhi kwachaval kalamte. Thank you for getting the water. I can't drink cold water in the morning. It gives me a stomach ache.
Oh, sorry.
So that's why I just had to switch it out for regular temperature. So thank you though, I wasn't trying to.
Where's the regular water?
It's just the red one, it's
Oh,
turned
okay.
off, so
Oh,
it's just
okay.
room temperature.
Oh, okay.
And then in the restaurant hours, this one's turned on so it's hot, but usually it's just room temperature. But thank you very much. I wasn't
I remember.
trying to reject your water because it came from you. Okay, word for word. Vacham,
Vacham,
the resounding vibration.
the resounding vibration.
This word in Sanskrit is vacha. This is where the word we get like vocabulary from, or vocal. And that word you hear all over Sanskrit when we talk about words speaking is vacha. Shrisuka uvacha, or vacho vegam, manasakro vacho vegam, how to control the voice. So this is where we get that word, like vocal vocabulary is coming from there. Param,
Param,
only.
only.
Charana panjara,
Charana Panjara,
of the ankle bells.
of the ankle bells.
Titirinam,
Tatirinam,
of the titiri birds.
of the titiri birds.
Brahman,
Brahman,
O Brahmana,
O Brahman,
Arupa,
Arupa,
without form.
without form.
Mukaram,
Mukaram,
able to be very distinctly heard.
able to be very distinctly heard.
Srinavama,
Srinavama,
I hear.
I hear.
Tubhyam,
Tubhyam,
your.
your.
Labda,
Labda,
gotten.
gotten.
Kadamba,
Kadamba,
like the kadamba flower.
like the kadamba flower.
Ruchihi,
Ruchi,
lovely color.
lovely color.
Ankavitanka, on the beautiful circular hips.
On the beautiful circular hips.
Yasyam,
Yasyam,
on which.
on which.
Alata,
Alata,
sorry. Alata paridhi,
Alata Paradihi,
encirclement of burning cinders.
encirclement of burning cinders.
Qua,
Qua,
where.
where.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Valkalam,
Valkalam,
covering cloth.
covering cloth.
Te,
Te,
your.
your.
So I got confused there for a second about the verse I was doing. I thought I was doing, I was right. I got confused for a second. Translation. Oh, Brahmana, I can simply hear the tinkling of your ankle bells. Within those bells, titiri birds seem to be chirping among themselves. Although I not see their forms, I can hear how they are chirping. When I look at your beautiful circular hips, I see the lovely color of kadamba flowers, and your waist is encircled by a belt of burning cinders. Indeed, you seem to have forgotten to dress yourself. Please repeat. O Brahmana,
O Brahmana,
I can simply hear the tinkling of your ankle bells.
I can simply hear the tinkling of your ankle bells.
Within those bells,
Within those bells,
titiri birds
titiri birds
seem to be chirping among themselves.
seem to be chirping among themselves.
Although I do not see their forms,
Although I do not see their forms,
I can hear how they are chirping.
I can hear how they are chirping.
When I look at your beautiful circular hips,
When I look at your beautiful circular hips,
I see they are the lovely color of kadamba flowers.
I see they are the lovely color of kadamba flowers.
And your waist is encircled by a belt of burning cinders.
And your waist is encircled by a belt of burning cinders.
Indeed, you seem to have forgotten to dress yourself.
Indeed, you seem to have forgotten to dress yourself.
Purport. With lusty desires to see Purvachiti, Agnidra especially gazed upon the girl's attractive hips and waist. When a man looks upon a woman with such lusty desires, he is captivated by her face, her breasts, and her waist. For a woman first attracts a man to fulfill his sexual desires by the beautiful features of her face, by the beautiful slope of her breasts, and also by her waist. Purvachita was dressed in fine yellow silk, and therefore her hips looked like kadamba flowers. Because of her belt, her waist seemed to be encircled by burning cinders. She was fully dressed, but Anidra had become so lusty that he asked, "Why have you come naked?" Haribol. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namo. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nirmashesha Shanyavadi Pastutari Shatari. Prabhupada. So we got a very good verse here to understand the nature of the mode of passion. And it's interesting. We think, how are we to understand all of this stuff? Because there's so much to understand in Bhagavatam. And there's a big element of Bhagavatam that's speaking about this lust, especially this man-woman bhav, and how it's so degrading to the consciousness, it's so degrading to the soul. And it can be difficult to understand. I liked one thing that Dhruva said when he was here. He said that kama is a little different than the rest of the anarthas because kama has something to do with biology. So there's a biological element. You have biology, that's just, everybody has biology. Then you have this lust, which is an expanded or a perverted form of the biological functions therein. So biology versus lust, we have to understand that. There's one pastime that I'm remembering where there was one devotee, he was actually aspiring for sannyas, and he was going to take sannyas. And Prabhupada was giving him a lot of special mercy. Srila Prabhupada was speaking to him a lot, and he was kind of grooming him for sannyas. So one day, it so happened that when he was a brahmachari, he went to speak to Srila Prabhupada, and he was going to ask Prabhupada to take sannyas. But in order to talk to Srila Prabhupada, he had to go through Srila Prabhupada's assistant, who was Shyamasundar Prabhu. And so he said, I want to speak to Prabhupada. Shyamasundar said, what do you want to speak to Prabhupada about? I just want to talk to Prabhupada. He said, what do you want to talk to him about? We don't want to bother him with something mundane. He said, I want to take sannyas. And Shyamasundar Prabhu said, you really think you're ready for sannyas? You think that you can handle sannyas? He said, don't you ever think of sex? He said, well, yeah. He says, then how could you say you want to take sannyas? He said, I don't know if you should take sannyas, but I think you should get married. So the Prabhu, being discouraged by Shyamasundar Prabhu, left. And the next day he came and he said, I want to talk to Srila Prabhupada. So I want to ask him if I can get married. And so when he knocked on the door and he went in to speak with Srila Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, I want to get married. And Prabhupada said, what happened to you? What happened to you? Who did this to you? What's going on? And then the Prabhu said, well, Shyamasundar Prabhu told me if I think of sex, I should get married. And Prabhupada became very furious. He said, how dare you? Who do you think you are telling my brahmacharis to get married? How dare you? Prabhupada chastised Shyamasundar Prabhu pretty severely. He said, everybody thinks of sex, you idiot. And so the Prabhu still ended up getting married. But Prabhupada made this point that, there's a biological element, and then there's an element of lust, where that biology becomes contorted and perverted by the mode of passion. And we see that more and more happening in the world today. So the first thing to understand is that because of the condition of the material world, especially now, sexuality has been pretty much associated exclusively with happiness, pleasure, the kind of pinnacle of existence. Whereas, although we hear in the Bhagavatam that the whole material world revolves around sex life, it's also understood that there were other elements. People understood God in previous ages. People actually had a higher kind of concept of happiness. But because now this act of man and woman coming together has become the kind of pinnacle of material life, people are aspiring for that, but it doesn't make them happy. We hear, Yehi samsparsha jaboga dukkhayonya evate adyatavanta konte aniteshi ramate buddha. Krishna is explaining that a wise person does not delight in the pleasures of the senses. In fact, he says, they're dukkhayonya evate. What does dukkha mean?
Misery.
What does yoni mean? Womb. So it says dukkha yoni evate, that the pleasures of the senses are the womb of misery. All of the misery we're experiencing is because we aspire for sense gratification. Dukkha yoni evate. So Krishna says that wise people don't delight in them because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So in actuality, the happiness that comes from eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and all of the bodily functions, there is no happiness whatsoever. There's not even a drop of happiness in any of those things. Those are just illusions of the senses. And so the living entities in this material world are caught up in this illusion. And in fact, the human beings, especially more than other species of life, are caught up in this fact, thinking that this sex pleasure is going to bring me happiness. It is so prominent everywhere you go. You see an advertisement. Advertisements are all sexualized. Everything is totally sexualized. Because this is the concept of materialistic happiness. Whereas in actuality, there's not even a single drop of happiness in any of these material things. But that doesn't mean it's evil, because there's a biological element. Just like biology tells us we have to eat, biology tells us we have to sleep, biology tells us we have to defend ourselves, and so biology also has this element of living entities need to procreate. This procreation is part of the material energy. So we have to understand that the biological functions of the material world are not evil. They're not evil things innately. There's a nice book that was written by Pope John Paul II, and actually Tamal Hari Prabhu kind of exposed me to this, because I was asking him once, because I know he was in seminary for quite a few years. So I asked him, well, what do they teach about, brahmacharya there? Because these guys are practicing celibacy. And so I was asking him, what do they do there? How do they, preach about this stuff? And he's explained that, previously it was kind of just repress, and then now you have a new kind of system. And so one of these things he kind of showed me was, he showed me this concept. It's called theology of the body, which is basically some writings that were done by Pope John Paul II, in which he describes that, the sexuality of the material world is a perverted reflection of the pure sexuality, not in the sense that we're speaking of in Krishna consciousness, but basically the pure sexuality or the pure attraction that's there, the pure beauty. And the idea is that when someone sees someone beautiful, the real understanding, the spiritual understanding, and this is in that Catholic conception, is that this is the beauty of God. God created this beauty. This is beautiful, but my body wants to pervert it, my mind wants to pervert it, and it wants to control it, and it wants to lord over it and have it, and that's kind of a satanic, what they say, satanic inversion of that, appreciating the real beauty of the material world, which is there. So there's a biological element, but the biology isn't necessarily evil. So the point of spirituality, the point of Krishna consciousness, is not to be overwhelmed by our own biology. All the other living entities in the material world are overwhelmed by their biological functions. They are so immersed and concentrated in the bodily conception of life that they have no sense of control. The living entity in the human form of life can work with its own biology. We hear Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Viparasta Vegam, Etan Vegam Yogasheta Dira, Sarvam Abhiman Prativim Sashishyat. Rupa Goswami is explaining that the first, most basic principle of spirituality is to control these 6 urges. Vacho Vegam, the urge to speak. Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, the mind and anger. Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, the tongue. Viparasta Vegam, in the belly and genitals. When those 6 urges are controlled, one is qualified to become a teacher for everybody. I remember when I first read that verse, Dasa gave me a big stack of books, and I just was like opening up and I read that. I was like, whoa, so simple but so hard. It's really intense. It's very simple, but it's also very difficult to control these 6 urges. For me, it's especially the Vacho Vegam, the speaking. That's why I always give a lot of classes. I can speak about Krishna. When I was a little kid, I used to talk so much, they finally put me, I had a desk that was just separated from everybody else. I couldn't sit in the group. So I couldn't stop talking. So, and it was, at first it was like, they'd move me away for a day, and they'd move me away for 2 days, and finally my desk just permanently remained. They had like 4 desks, so my desk was just permanently separated. I would still find ways to talk. But We have to control these things. We don't want to be overwhelmed by biology. We don't want to be overwhelmed by this body. And so this lust is also there. And we hear about lust, how it works in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna asks, by what is one impelled to sinful activities as if by force? Krishna says, it's lust only, Arjuna, which is born from contact with the material mode of passion, which burns like fire and is never satiated. So this overwhelming sense that we have when the senses become overwhelmed and we feel like we have to act, that's where the animals are at. They're just overwhelmed by their senses. They see the food, they see the female, the male, they just have to act upon it. They must, because they're overwhelmed by the modes of material nature, the lower modes, passion and ignorance. Where the human being can cultivate goodness and therefore not become overwhelmed by that, can become free from it. So that mode of passion takes away our free will. To the degree that one is caught up in the mode of passion and then in the mode of ignorance, free will is taken away. We see that all the living entities in the material world, in fact all living entities have free will. But how much free will are they able to execute? How much free will can the tree use? How much free will can the cockroach use? They have very little free will because they're so covered over by the modes of material nature. Actually, the modes of material nature are controlling them. And the living entity who is not covered over, living entity in the mode of goodness and in the mode of pure goodness, he can express that free will in a very, very powerful way. He can choose to control his senses. So the passion, especially lust, it takes away our free will. Lust really takes away our free will. Because when one is overwhelmed by lust, now even though I don't want to do something, I'm going to do it. And we hear that. Go talk to any drug addict, hard drug addict. They don't want to be doing this. You see these guys outside, slumped over. They don't want to be doing this. It's horrible. It's a horrible fate. And they feel horrible about themselves. You speak to any drug addicts I've lived with a lot, I've known a lot. They don't want to be doing this. Alcoholics, they know how bad it is for them. Even people who are addicted to eating really unhealthy, they know how bad it is. But they can't stop. Because their free will is taken away by the addiction, by this mode of passion, this desire to enjoy. And that's Maya's trick. That's how she gets us. So, therefore, it's not that the biological functions of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are evil. But when they become contorted by the weakness of heart, when they become contorted by our desire to enjoy, that's when they become totally destructive. Just think about it. People are willing to commit mass murder in so many ways to enjoy their senses. Think about it. They're just slaughtering so many animals to enjoy their senses. Because they can't control that biology. I need to eat. And I'm so controlled by my tongue, I have to eat things that I feel taste good. So I want to eat meat, and I want to eat chicken and beef and all this, the most obnoxious things, pork, the most obnoxious of all things, full of parasites. So disgusting. And so, in that way, they kill so many things. And then sex, to enjoy sex, they murder so many children through abortion. Abortion is the #1 cause of death now. If you actually count living entities that are being aborted as alive, it's the #1 cause of death. Over every other cause of death, abortion is the #1 cause of death. Isn't that disgusting? My generation, the #1 cause of death for my generation by a lot is abortion. And in fact, abortion has killed more people than Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, and Mao Zedong combined. So we think, this is not such a big deal. People actually think like that. It's actually worse than the Holocaust. It's worse than communist Russia. The Holocaust was intentional murder. People were starving to death in Russia, and there was a lot of intentional, execution and stuff. But every single one is an intentional murder. So can you imagine? And then we wonder why we have so much bad karma in the world. So this is what uncontrolled senses do. This biology is taking over. So therefore the key is consciousness. And further than that, Krishna consciousness. Everything should be done consciously. Somehow, over the years of me being a devotee, I found myself helping and counseling a lot of young boys who are born in our movement, both in India and here. Because they're dealing with biology and they're trying to be devotees. We hear, when you're a little kid, I just remember in the church, you're hearing about how bad sin is and being like, yeah, sin is so bad. I'll never sin. And then all of a sudden puberty hits and all of a sudden that propensity to sin is getting very strong and then overwhelming. So also for every person, especially those who are born in our movement, they're hearing, little children are hearing, yeah, it's all Maya, And it's like, yeah, I could be a brahmachari when I'm 8 years old, no problem. And then once you become 13 years old, now everything's shifting. Now all of a sudden I'm questioning my ability. And so, because this is kind of embarrassing a lot of the time, because they don't understand, they kind of hide this thing and it becomes very disturbing. And I think that's caused a lot of problems in our movement. And they become disturbed because they think, something's wrong with me, and it's an isolating thing, like it's happened to every single person, it's happened to every person, but they think something's wrong with me, I'm full of lust. And somehow or another, when they see me, I think they see, I'm kind of their age, and I'm a brahmachari, and so this guy seems successful, and so they somehow come and talk to me about this stuff. And I found that it's been really helpful for me and helpful for them, also in India too. Because India, the whole culture is kind of like that. But one thing people have to understand is that there's an element that's just natural, and then there's an element where it becomes contorted. And just like anything, everything has to be done with consciousness. We don't want to become unconscious. We don't want to become overwhelmed by our senses. And so how do we live consciously? So especially this lust, which we're seeing in Maharaj here, he's becoming overwhelmed by the beauty of Purvachiti. And therefore he's going unconscious, losing all sense. And so a spiritual living entity can acknowledge beauty, can acknowledge these things without being overwhelmed by them, without this need to control or to enjoy. Kadambakana Swami once said something really nice. He said, Prabhus, you may think you're advanced, but he goes, every single one of you, speaking to some brahmachari, know who the most beautiful girl in the room is. And you knew within 2 seconds of coming into the room. And so in that way, there's an acknowledgement that this is Krishna's energy, but we also have to be aware that this is being used in Krishna's service. So everything should be done consciously. We eat, but we don't eat unconsciously. What is eating unconsciously? It means, I eat whatever comes in front of me. And I eat when I'm hungry. I'm hungry, let me just eat. I'm hungry, let me just go find some food and eat. I don't care what it is, let me eat. And so then there's higher levels of consciousness. Now I actually want to eat healthy. Okay, I'm going to eat, maybe I'll become a vegetarian. But the highest form of conscious eating is let me eat prasad. Let me eat and recognize that this is coming from Krishna and honor prasad. And so if you're eating prasadam without honoring it, if you're just eating unconsciously, eating prasadam, you're getting some benefit because you're eating prasad, but you're not actually getting the real full benefit of taking prasad, because when you eat prasad consciously, you're controlling your tongue. That's controlling the tongue. And I'll only eat prasad. I want to eat prasad. I only eat prasad. I was saying that I love pizza, but I would never want to eat a pizza that's not offered to Krishna. Or, I love pizza, but if the pizza has, one piece of meat on it, it's ruined. There has to be consciousness as we do things. And with that consciousness, it frees us. So the same thing goes with sexuality. Sexuality is a force that's very strong. In fact, it's the strongest emotion in the material world. But if it becomes unconscious, it becomes a force that controls us, then it totally it will in fact ruin our lives, undeniably ruin our lives. But when it becomes controlled, when it becomes something that I use consciously, either to control it or to use it for having children, or to transmute it into higher levels of being, it becomes very powerful because it's the creative force. It's the creative energy that's coming from God. But it can be expressed through the lower biological way or through a higher way. And Bhakti Swami, he wrote this beautiful book, Transforming Lust into Love, Spiritual Warrior 2. That book is one of my all-time favorites. But he speaks a lot about this, that one can transform this perverted desire for love, which is actually what lust is. It's adi ras, it's the desire for love, into lust in the material world, but transferred back into love in the spiritual sense. And what does that mean? It means that I'm trying to enjoy for myself, but actually I want to give Krishna pleasure. I want to give all the living entities pleasure. But that same force, that same energy, because energy can't be destroyed nor created, correct? We understand that. So that means sexual energy in our bodies, it can't be destroyed nor created. It has to be transformed. So when it's not wasted, when one is going into things with consciousness, it transforms into something else. So everything we do can be done with consciousness. But why is it there's so much focus in the Bhagavatam in terms of sex? I mean, we hear about it so much. It's like all over the Bhagavatam. Why is it? What's the deal? Why is it so focused on? Because it is the most powerful of all the different senses that can really trap us in the material consciousness. It expands the bodily concept of life. That's the main thing. Is that when someone becomes attracted to the opposite sex, the natural consciousness becomes their mind. This is my wife, this is my husband, this is my boyfriend. And then the expansion of that, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my family, this is my house, this is my. And so in this way, the living entity becomes fully immersed in the bodily conception of life. That is, however, if one is completely unconscious. But if one does things consciously, acknowledging the biological situation that I'm in, some living entities have a higher propensity to become brahminical, brahmachari. Some living entities are less inclined, or less, that propensity is not there. But still, all these activities, when done with consciousness and with intention, they become liberating. Now let me have children for Krishna. This house is Krishna's, and we have a deity, and we're offering all the food to Krishna, and the children are Krishna's. And in that way, the situation becomes a liberating situation. So basically, we have to work with what we got. Because we all got a different biological system. Some people are very much inclined toward remaining celibate their whole life. They can do it. Some people simply can't. Or it causes so many problems, then we have, it causes a lot of big problems. In fact, in traditional Varnashram Dharma, the Brahmana people, they were the only ones allowed to remain celibate their whole life. Whereas others generally were encouraged to get married. Still, the concept remains that let me remain controlled. So then everything's done with consciousness. And when everything's done with consciousness, you can bring in Krishna consciousness. That I'm doing this for Krishna. I'm loving this person for Krishna. My wife, she's Krishna's. And she's a partner for me to serve Krishna with. Now that doesn't mean there's not affection, that doesn't mean there's not love. We should love every living entity, but the expression of that love is different. The expression of the love we have for our gurus is going to be different from the expression of love we have for our friends. It's going to be different from the expression of love we have for our children or our partner. So these natural affections will be there. But once again, they're done consciously. And so in this way, our entire lives can become Krishnized by living consciously. Just like when I brush my teeth in the morning, I've been thinking how I'm cleaning Krishna's body. And how this body's a temple, and we say we clean the floor of the temple, it cleanses our heart. But when you realize your body's a temple, just bathing your body is actually can be devotional service. You're cleaning the temple. By cleansing your body, you're cleaning Krishna's temple. And so in this way, it becomes conscious. Because how easy is it to become unconscious, especially if we're devotees, especially if we're brahmacharis living in the temple, every day for 6 years I've been waking up at the same time, doing the exact same thing every morning. And so you can basically just find a way to tune completely out of everything and just be completely unconscious during the whole morning program. I'm brushing my teeth and not thinking, oh, I have Prabhupada class playing, but I'm not really conscious. I just put it on because that's what I do. And now I'm bathing my body, but I'm totally unconscious. Mind is here. Now I'm chanting japa, I'm falling asleep, and I'm totally unconscious. Now I'm in class, falling asleep, unconscious, not really listening. Now I'm taking prasad, I'm totally unconsciously. Now it's time for seva and a nap. And so in this way, we can just become totally disassociated from Krishna. But when that same activity becomes full of consciousness, now I'm waking up, I'm hearing a class very intentionally. I'm going into the shower, bathing my body for Krishna, brushing my teeth for Krishna, putting on tilak, very consciously thinking of Krishna, coming to Mangal Artik, what do these bhajans mean, what do these songs mean, thinking about the spiritual master, chanting Hare Krishna. Then you become joyful, actually you become happy, and you can dance, and you can do all these things because you're feeling the bhav, you're feeling the nectar, because you're actually Krishna conscious. And Bhagavatam class is the most important part of our day. We're hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, feeding our minds and our hearts. And so it's not just living in the temple. Point I'm making is that every ashram is completely fixed and suitable in itself to become fully spiritualized, including the Grihastha ashram. Sometimes there's this element, we get a lot of people asking the question, how do I deal with my material life? And they're at the temple and they have their spiritual life, they come to the temple, they're chanting, and they say, how do I deal with my material life? The truth is, there is no material life if you're a devotee. There is no material life. And the fact that you're seeing that my children and my husband and my wife and kids are a material life is proof that you're in Maya. Ritartam yat pratiyeta na pratita chatmani tadvidyaratmano maya yatabaso yatatamaha. When you're seeing something separate from Krishna, that's Maya. So the children are your service. The wife is your service. The husband is your service. Now everything changes. So with that being said, we have to understand what is our dharma in that position. What is the proper way to serve in that way? If you're a husband, you can't just sit around and be a brahmachari and chant all day. That's sinful. You're going to get bad reactions for that. Husband means taking care of children, working, doing all the things necessary to maintain family. And offering that to Krishna, that's pure devotional service. Wife means being very sweet, very loving toward the husband, serving the children and doing whatever is necessary to maintain the griha. This is the nature, this is the dharma of those positions. Just like living in the temple, if I just decided to stop coming to the morning program and doing any service, I'd be extricated from the temple because I'm not doing my dharma. And I'd get bad reactions. So everybody should do their dharma properly. The thing is people don't really want to take responsibility, especially now. That's the big problem. People don't want to become responsible. That's why we're seeing the abortion. That's why we're seeing, how many people would really be meat eaters if they had to go and kill their own cow? I know some who, where I'm from, I know some who would, but I know many who wouldn't too. No one would do it because they would not want to, have to kill an animal, like cut a big animal's throat and then gut it, and all the work that goes into that, because people are unconscious. They don't even realize that they're eating an animal. They're just eating a chicken or eating, a chicken nugget. It's like it's a serious abomination. If you think about it, when you eat people who eat like a hot dog, they're not just eating like a cow, they're eating millions of cows. In that one hot dog, there's just millions of dead cows. So they're getting this Maha death karma. So it's really crazy. It's all unconsciousness. So we hear the Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj says, Tat Sagamanye Suryavagya Dehinam Sadasamadvinga Dhyama Sadgrahat. That it's a sadgrahat that, my dear father, you're caught up in that which is temporary. A sadgrihat, you're caught up in this temporary household life. And that's another element of unconsciousness. That we're caught up in that which is is temporary. See, even this is temporary too. We should understand that, oh, well, I'm in the temple, that's eternal, right? That's spiritual. No, it's also temporary. Kirtanesvara is a temporary identity. I'm a servant of God, but my service is temporary. You think that when if we die and go back to Godhead, am I still going to be, I've done some weird services over the years. I don't think I've had to, do some weird things over the years. I think we all might have had to do some weird services. I mean, there's a low likelihood that we'll be doing some of those things in the spiritual world. I don't think I'll be beating up homeless people in the spiritual world, But still, somehow that's our service to Krishna. But it's also temporary. So we don't want to identify with that which is temporary. That's asadrihat. Essentially, it's temporal. So what is eternal? The eternal element is that I'm a servant of Krishna. And so we have to be conscious of the fact that I'm a servant of Krishna. And that's really what I am. When Kadamba Maharaj was leaving his body, he said, I only see this death as just a change of service. So with that understood, we should think that, my griha, that's also a sadgriha, it's temporary. And when one becomes fully absorbed in it, that's when Prahlad Maharaj says, Hitvatma patam griham andakupan, that it's the death of the soul and it's a dark well. It's just like a dark well that no one can escape because they're caught up in that which is not, this temporal situation. But understanding that this is service, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, everything belongs to you, my Nanda Kishore. That's the real understanding. So this is the proper way. And therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises Hiranyakashipu, who was very much in Maya, he says, Vanagato yad dharimashireta, go out to the forest and perform austerity. But Prahlad Maharaj himself was a grihastha later on. But why? Why was he different from Hiranyakashipu? Because he understood this nature of things. So I want to bring up a point here in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. There's a nice point Prabhupada makes, and we'll go through it, and it's really, really beautiful. In the last verse of the 15th chapter, Prabhupada says, or Krishna says, this is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. And then in the last paragraph, Prabhupada says, while one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. Yes, weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The second weakness of heart is that one increases the propensity to lord over material nature. He becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. So this is the weakness of heart we have. And what's this desire to lord over material nature? It's, I want things my way. And that's the problem with, that's why Prahlad Maharaj is so heavy on this, Hitvatma patam griham andakupam. Because this situation of whenever you get this involved, this sex life, which is not, like I said, it's not evil, but it's dangerous. My Guru Maharaj always says, whenever you're around sex life, you should think of it as holding a cobra. There's a picture of a guy holding a cobra like this. You should think of it as holding a cobra. Now you're safe from that cobra right here, but it's dangerous because at any point you can become entangled. So it's not evil. Krishna says, I am sex life, not contrary to religious principles, but it is dangerous. Just like we're seeing here, this Prabhu is totally caught by the cobra. So, because it increases this propensity to, first off, let me make things my way. And we see that. We see that because, if husband and wife come together and they're just totally surrendered to serve Krishna, totally a good thing. But the natural propensity, even for devotees, is, let's improve, let's get a bigger house, let's move to Mayapur. Everything could be great once we get to Mayapur, and we get our flat there. This is you see it. You see that, I gotta, improve, and then you see that the guy, he's out there slaving, doing something, and then the whole thing, which was started off, seemingly beautiful, the girl and the boy loved each other and whatnot. Now the whole thing's become some contorted mess. because I need to lord over material nature. We need to improve our situation. This is not good. And therefore you see even the best of devotees become totally miserable. And then they hate their family. And then everybody becomes all disturbed because of the weakness of heart. And then the farther expansion of that is he desires to possess. Now he thinks this is mine. And this is mine. These are my kids. And so in that way we overcome weakness of heart. And what Prabhupada says here in this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart. I'll read these verses, but I feel like Mother Sundamani has a question. Okay, good. You're just standing there, so I was thinking you might have something to say. So Prabhupada says the first 5 verses of the chapter 15 describe how to overcome weakness of heart. And so I was thinking we could go over those verses. Text 1, it says, "It is said there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upwards and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Veda kins. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas." So this material world is there described as a banyan tree. We've seen the pictures before. But it's a big entangling tree. Prabhupada says no one can understand where it begins and where its end is. In this way it's entangling. "The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the modes of nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. The tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society." So we're bound by these fruitive actions. We're caught up in this tree. "The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is." So this is the nature of material entanglement. We can't understand where we became entangled and where we're going to become unentangled. Prabhupada says, but with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. So it doesn't mean we don't do our dharma. It means we become detached with the weapon of detachment. "Therefore, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial." So we're seeking the real root of everything, which is Krishna. And we have to become detached. And how do we become detached? What's the proper way to becoming detached?
Understand the truth.
Yeah, that'll make us detached. Truth makes us detached. When you understand, like Balaram Prabhu gives this example, if you have some sweet rice, this looks really nice, I'm super attached to eating that. So yours, well, actually, I put salt in it, not sugar. Now I'm detached. When you understand the material world is totally disgusting, now I'm detached. But also another element is that even if we can't understand, even though it's just, we can't become detached that easily, there's another way. Because so we're attached, we have to become detached from the fruits. We may be attached to the work of being in this ashram or that ashram or this varna. We may be attached in that way. We got to give up the roots. Krishna says that one who is detached from the fruits of his work, but who does his duty, that person's the real sannyasi. How's the verse start?
Anashrita.
Anashrita karma palam karyam karoti karma.
Karotiyaha.
Karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi cha yogi na niragni na chakraya. It says that the real person is karyam karma karoti cha. He is not attached to the fruits of his work. He's working as he's obliged. So we work as we're obliged. So if we're a grihasta, we have all the obligations therein. Brahmacharya, all the obligations therein. And so we may switch, we may change our services, we may go from here to there, but the point is we never give up the service of Krishna. We have to remain attached to Krishna, doing it for Krishna. Krishna is the goal. Keep the goal in mind. My Guru Maharaj was giving a class on Krishna Code 2 weeks ago. He's saying, the goal, we start with the end in mind. What's the end? The end is, let us go back to Godhead. Let us be pure devotees of Krishna. And in that way, we may have to do so many things, but still the end is Krishna. And then Prabhupada says, or Krishna says, those who are free from false prestige, so we have to be free from thinking we're better than others, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. So in this way, Prabhupada says these 5 verses constitute overcoming the weakness of heart. And that weakness of heart is when we desire to lord over, when we desire to control things. When we try to control things, we start saying, this is mine. And in this way, we become unable to perform devotional service. We give up our service. So it's not that lust is bad. It's not that attraction is bad. What's bad is that it's dangerous because sometimes, a lot of the time, it increases this weakness of heart. So everything is done good if we're guided by expert devotees. And this Prabhu here, Maharaj Agnidra, from the very beginning, he wanted to enjoy. He had no Krishna as the goal. His goal was to go to the heavenly planets, the Pitru Loka. So he was pretty much doomed from the very beginning in that sense. And he was doing austerity not for Krishna. He was doing austerity to get a beautiful Apsara girl. We see Arjuna. He was tempted by an Apsara, no effect. Haridas Thakur was tempted by Maya Devi herself, no effect. We see that sometimes devotees, great devotees, they have also beautiful opulence like Pudrik Vidyaniti. And they may have wives and children, but because they're understanding that Krishna is the goal, they're beyond it. Okay, so we'll stop here. Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
I was also thinking about this detachment. And I heard a couple of nice things that I thought were helpful to me anyway. One was somebody was saying how detachment is not something that just happens to you or that you get all of a sudden. It's a constant practice. It's like a lifelong thing. Every situation you think about things, and so it's a practice. And the other thing was that hang on a second. Yeah, it said detachment doesn't mean that you become like a stone or you become, indifferent to people or your family or friends or anything. It means clarity. And it uses word clarity, so it's like you understand things in the proper relationship, you're thinking clearly, you have that clarity, and detachment is there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Krishna said it when we hear, Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Gyanam Jayata Haitukam, that when we do devotional service, detachment happens, yet all the pure devotees are super affectionate. And many times they are in so-called material positions. But the point is that they understand the eternal. They understand that it's temporary. And that's why I was saying is that one could say, oh, my household life is temporary. But if we think that, if we identify with this, I'm a brahmachari in the ISKCON Tucson temple, this is also just a temporary situation. The only eternal element is that I'm a servant of Krishna. And so that's we have to become attached to that. Yes?
Just one last thing. One of Sridhananda Maharaj's trips here, he said something that stuck in my head. Because you were talking about how we start to, relate to this weakness of the heart, we want to lord it over and control things. He said, what would it be if you walked into someone's apartment and put your grubby fingers on things and just stuck them in your pocket? You just walked around somebody else's property and did that. So that was his comparison to what we do in this world. We see something we like and we try to keep it.
We try to control it. And the thing is
grubby little fingers.
Krishna, and that's the point, Krishna will arrange it. Everything that we, Krishna does things naturally. We don't have to, make so much effort. Prabhupada says this point so much, and I love this point. You don't go out looking for, breaking your leg or getting cut or getting an injury, but it happens. So why don't we need to go out and look for, trying to make our lives so much better? Everything's going to come. And Jesus says the same thing. He says, first ye seek the kingdom of God, and everything else shall be added unto thee. So our primary duty Our paradharma is that we should just perform pure devotional service. Krishna will carry what we lack and preserve what we have. And that maybe, we'll have we're all different. People need different things. So we have to be careful, and this is also freedom from false prestiges. Don't think that I'm more detached than you, I'm better than you. This is all dangerous. Chandrika?
You talk about consciousness, and consciousness ideally is love. So when we're doing everything with consciousness and we're doing it with love, that should be there like every moment of the day. I was thinking about that movie Groundhog Day, where like everything is like the same every day until you really become conscious of every single thing, and then there's a difference between love and lust. And sometimes people, they get married or whatever, and they start identifying this person that they felt love with because Krishna's in the center of the relationship, and they start identifying with that other person in a more of a lusty way, or like not seeing Krishna in the center and taking that person for granted. So it's almost like now you're moving away from the consciousness and love, and you're going into the lust, and that seems to be
If it's a service, what I've noticed is I think when people, I see this time and time again, like you'll have some devotee, he loves everybody, and then they get into a relationship and they have a very hard time with each other. Why? Because they're not doing a service of, my Guru Maharaj says so much of the time, they're not doing the service of treating each other like parts and parcels of Krishna. I want to lord over you. You're not acting the way I want you to act. And a lot of that actually, that goes into a lot of psychology that I do study. It has a lot to do with sexuality too. Is when people are craving love, that even in this world, that craving for love usually translates into lust. And they'll be really lusty. And I've seen people who really struggled, like they've been alone. They've been struggling with lust, like devotees I know, struggling with lust on a very deep level. And then they get into a relationship. And it's not that they're fulfilling their lust, but because they have a loving relationship, now that lust is greatly reduced. So we're looking for love. But when people start thinking, I need you to glorify my ego, it's that subtle thing that the girl, she's adoring the man, and the man is absorbing the girl, and that's really beautiful for the false ego. And then all of a sudden, now I start to see that you're just a regular person, and you have a lot of problems, and you have bad moods, and you smell sometimes, and all these things. Now all of a sudden, I don't really like you anymore. And so I'm not treating you like part and parcel of Krishna. It's like my Guru Maharaj, one time he was counseling a couple, and I heard him say, you are causing this yourself. You are both doing this to yourself. You're acting like fools. He was really being heavy. He said, your life is falling apart. He said, there are people who are, there was a flood. He said, a flood didn't happen. Your house didn't burn down. Nothing's even happened. You are simply acting like fools because you're treating each other badly. If you would treat each other nicely, it would be fine. That's what it comes down to. And Bhajanayan Swami, he always gave this marriage advice. He said, the only thing I can tell you is just be kind to each other. It goes a long way. Okay, we'll stop here. 9:03. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Where's the mic at?
The other thing isn't.
No, the mic was there. It was just the other mic was missing, not the end part.
This part was missing.
Oh, that's that.